Hi, everybody. My name's Martha, and I am an ex-Jehovah's Witness. I haven't said something like that since I was at a Narcotics Anonymous meeting. Hi, I'm Martha, and I'm an addict. Okay. I was born and raised as a witness. You know how it is for all of us. We start going to the meetings as infants. By the time I was 5 years old, I learned how to read by sitting on my mother's lap at the meetings and her following with the in the watchtower and the books as we studied them, following the words. I just don't remember ever not knowing how to read. I was in ministry school at 5 years of age and an unbaptized publisher at 5 years of age, knocking on the doors. Who could resist a little 5-year-old curly blonde-haired girl, Hi, I have the watchtower in the way, only for a contribution of 10 cents. I was back before they, when we were allowed to charge at the door. When I was in kindergarten, we always sang this song after our snack time. And then it was time to lay down and take a nap for 30 minutes. Well, one day, the teacher teaches all the kids the song, "He's got the whole world in his hands." I started crying. I sat in the back of the room. I was just all drawn in on myself, sitting there crying. So afterwards, now I'm not one to be rebellious. Well, back then anyway. But the teacher, after everyone else, all the other students laid down on their mats, the teacher called me up to the desk. Oh, sorry. That would help, wouldn't it? The teacher called me up to the desk, and she said, "What's wrong, Martha? Why don't you want to sing with the class?" I said, "Because the whole world is in the hands of Satan, and I will not sing about Satan." 5 years old. I was completely indoctrinated by that point, with the witness doctrines. Completely. One thing I've come to believe about that moment was that was the day that Jesus chose me to be his. I'm not going to tell you, I didn't get lost along the way, because boy, I sure did. But I got baptized when I was 13 years old, and I left the witness organization when I was 18. My attraction to the world started right after my baptism. Now, doesn't that seem odd? That after I got baptized and devoted my life to serving Jehovah, all of a sudden I was interested in worldly things. I wanted the world. I wanted what they had to offer. I still continue to believe that it was the truth for at least another 20 years. That's when I was at the church and they were praying on me, and I'm like, I got so filled with fear because I'd always been taught that people are possessed by demons, not by God's Spirit. And the people who claim that they have God's Spirit in them, in actuality, are being possessed by the devil and his followers. That's why they're speaking in tongues and rolling on the floor, and So I was scared. I was very, 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 very scared. Eventually, though, got to the point where I just thought, well, Jehovah's Witnesses' religion is just like everybody else's religion. It's just, they're all the same. They're all wrong. They're all just want to control the masses with fear. Now, I don't believe that anymore. I'd like to play a little thing here, if it will work, I hope. This is an organization. It's not going to let me. Well, maybe. I'll just go on. It's a little thing. It's an organization called AWA, AAWA. It's Advocates for, what is it? Witness abuses. So they're trying to reach out to people who have been abused by the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society organization. Well, I was certainly fall in that category. But what they said is they call us diseased, mentally diseased. They call us haters of God. There are so many people who've been hurt by this organization. It breaks my heart. My mother was the first one to be a Jehovah's Witness. Her oldest sister introduced her to the witnesses, even though her sister never became a witness. Some of her children did, however. My father worked out of town for 13 years. I never knew him until I was about 8 years old. That was when he finally came in. And he had no relatives in the organization. His family was all Catholic. My family kind of, because there were some who were in the truth and some who were not in the truth, our families literally became like divided half and half. Family reunions, you have the Jehovah's Witnesses and you have the non-Jehovah's Witnesses. Sometimes they even have family reunions for only the Jehovah's Witness part of our family. What's really bad is that I've had to sit back and watch so many of the people that I love be hurt, disfellowshipped, abandoned, abused by this religion. And there was nothing I could do. They certainly aren't going to listen to me, after all. I'm not a witness anymore. My mother used to, whenever we would get out of line, she would sit us all on the couch, all four of us, and then my brother oldest sat in another chair. And she would have the Bible in one hand and a yardstick in the other. And if you didn't sit there quietly and listen to her as she lectured us, we got it with the yardstick. Whack! She didn't even have to get up. She would say, "This isn't me saying these things. This is God. You have to do what God says. This is His word that's telling you this." Of course, it was all distorted by the Watchtower's doctrines, but as a child, you don't understand that. What I find so sad about my mother is that she has spent the past 60 years waiting for the fulfillment of a prophecy that's just false. She's devoted her entire life to serving an organization that is currently falling apart. I read right before I came here, they're now canceling the ministry school. To me, that was the fun part about being a witness. The assemblies, the ministry school, all the... I'm so afraid that it's going to kill her when she finally comes to realize that the witnesses do not have the truth at all. In fact, they have a false religion that is based on the false prophecies of one man. So there's some things, that really are vital to Jehovah's Witnesses. One is blood transfusions. We do not take blood transfusions at all. I'm sorry. They do not. My cousin had a son who had leukemia. And, of course, this was many, many, many years ago. They didn't have any cure for leukemia then. All they could do was give blood transfusions. And naturally, they're a witness. It's okay to lose your life here because, you know, you're going to be resurrected back here. So you just get to pick up where you left off, I guess. I don't know. He died, needless to say. He was 4 years old. He died. My brother, when he was 19, was in a car accident. And in the emergency room, he was injured very badly, internally, bleeding internally and everything. And the hospital called my parents for permission to give him blood. Because if they didn't give him blood, he was going to die. Well, my parents refused over the phone. When they got to the hospital, the doctors came out and pleaded with them again. And my mom starts talking about all these blood expanders and stuff, you know. Well, she refused, naturally, to give her permission for them to give my brother blood. And my father didn't contradict her, even though he had been disfellowshipped years before. And so my brother laid there and he died, bled to death. He was 19. My sister had a relationship, was married to a brother, and this man beat her and abused her and beat his children and abused his children. Fortunately, there were several hospitals. They had 8 children, too. But there were several hospitals in the area. So my sister would take her children to the different hospitals so they would not know. They wouldn't put the abuse together, you know. One day, her husband slapped his oldest daughter, across the face. And she was injured so badly that she couldn't even hold her head up anymore. So my sister had to take her to the hospital. Sorry, I'm getting a little dry mouth here. After they examined my niece, she was 13. The doctor came to my sister and he said, okay, there's only one way for this injury to have occurred. Now, she had her other children in there for broken arms, for all kinds of different injuries. And, of course, it was always he fell off his bike, he, fell down the steps, he tripped. Okay. This time the doctor said, no, this accident doesn't happen accidentally. There's only one way for this accident to happen, for this injury to occur. So who was it, you or was it your husband? And my sister broke down and she started crying. And she told them that it was her husband. Naturally, child welfare got involved immediately. They came to the hospital. They took her children. They took all of her children. And they gave her a choice. You can come with us to an abuse shelter with your children, or you can go back to your husband. But your children are staying with us. So my sister did go and stay at the shelter, and she finally managed to get away from that marriage. Of course, she didn't get divorced. You don't get divorced if you're a Jehovah's Witness. She moved to Florida. I helped her move all the way to Florida. And her husband followed her a couple of years later. And naturally, the brothers at the meeting told my sister, he's your husband. You have to let him come back and live with you. Well, all those years that he was abusing her, she would go to them for help. And they said, If he's coming home and beating you for your house being dirty, clean the house better. If he's coming home and beating your children, then keep your children in line. Tell them that they have to obey their father. She got no help. My daughters. I allowed my children to study the Watchtower materials with my mother, because naturally, I'm going to die at Armageddon, but I didn't want my children to die. So I let them. Both of my daughters were disfellowshipped for things that they did not do. But the brothers didn't believe them when they said they didn't do these things. And so my oldest daughter, when they brought her before the committee, they said, "You show no repentance." And she said, "How can I repent for something I haven't done? How am I supposed to show repentance for something that I have not done?" What happened was her friend was disfellowshipped, and her friend didn't want to be disfellowshipped alone. So she made up stories about my daughter, so that my daughter would be disfellowshipped. They told her she had a bad attitude. Okay. My other daughter, she started seeing, she became interested in a brother who had previously been married. We know what that kind of problems that can cause. So the brothers talked to them and to their mother and to his mother before they started dating. They went to the brothers. They got permission to date because his wife had been unfaithful, according to him and his mother. Well, 6 months later, they get engaged. A couple weeks after that, his wife writes a letter, his ex-wife, who's was in prison, serving a 10-year sentence for gross neglect of her grandmother, to the point where she died. So she was convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to prison for 10 years. She writes a letter to the brothers, to the elders in the congregation, and she says, "I was not unfaithful to Mike. He is not free to remarry." So the brothers tell my daughter and Mike that they can no longer see each other. They can no longer talk on the phone. They can no longer go to the same kingdom halls. They had to go to separate kingdom halls. They were not to be in contact with each other at all. Well, they ran off and got married. And they were both disfellowshipped. Now, both of my daughters were disfellowshipped, but both of them worked their way right back into the organization. In the meantime, I'm just letting this happen because, that's right, they're the only ones that have the truth. And I want my children to be saved, not to die at Armageddon. At this point, I guess they're both considered inactive, because they do not go to the meetings anymore. And they are at the stage where the witnesses is just another religion like all the religions. That's where they're at. And it's okay for them to be there. I stayed there for a very, very long time, like over 35 years. I rode that fence. I've also had nieces and nephews disfellowshipped, just for being human, making mistakes, committing sin. The Watchtower Bible and Tract Society is the only organization or the only thing I've ever heard of that when you scratch your hand, they cut off your arm so it doesn't get infected. Exactly. And that's what they do. When a member of their flock becomes ill, spiritually ill, they throw them out to the wolves, out to the world. And they give them no comfort, no treatment, no advice, just banishment. So, now I want to talk about apostasy. That's why I keep putting my glasses back on and off, because I have an outline here. I have to keep track of it. I'll get off track. My very first experience with an apostate, I was 12 years old, and a group of us got together and took some tour buses up to Bethel, up to the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society headquarters, and took a tour. And there was a man outside, and he had these pamphlets and flyers and stuff, and he was just out there just, oh, no, this is an evil organization. Oh, I'm like, Mom, who's that? She says, he's an apostate. Don't pay any attention to him. Okay, I wasn't sure what an apostate was, but it obviously was something very, very bad. Okay. One day, I was very confused, talking to God. Please, show me. Please, God, give me some sort of a sign to let me know whether the witnesses truly are the one religion. The next day, I had Pentecostals show up at my door. I had Baptists show up at my door. What was the other one? I can't even remember. 3 different religions came knocking on my door. Now, I thought Jehovah's Witnesses were the only ones that went out and knocked on doors. Well, obviously, I was wrong. Oh, and Mormons. But here these people were, knocking on my door. All 3 in the same day, the very next day. Now, is that not divine? Certainly was to me. That was when I realized that the witnesses don't have the only path to salvation. Rape and pedophilia, another subject I guess I felt compelled to discuss. My younger sister, at 14 years of age, was dating a brother from the hall who was in his 20s. And he raped her one day. I didn't find out about this for several years later. The reason why is because I'm not a witness, and I am not going to keep something like that a secret. You know, I am not. They did just like they still do, just like has been brought out recently with all of these pedophile cases and what's going on in Australia and all of that. It was the same back then. We take care of this in-house. We will take care of him. You keep your mouth shut. She ended up moving to Florida. The man followed them. But my mother had become wise to him at this point. Oh, he also claimed to be one of the anointed. He was one of the new anointed ones. You know, somebody who was anointed became unanointed, like Brother Franz. I don't know who else to think. I knew that man. I loved him. My mother loved him. Oh, I don't even think she knows that he was apostate. Anyway, kind of lost my thought. Oh, he couldn't worm his way back in with my little sister. So what did he do? He moved 100 miles away to Kissimmee, Florida, and found another young sister and raped her. I'm not sure if anything was ever done to this man. I hope if you're watching this that you know that you're going to be judged by God for the things you've done. But now, as it is, he is a brother in good standing in the congregation back up in Ohio where he came from. He tried to contact me. He actually did contact me through Facebook, wanting to send my sister a message. I didn't know who he was at first. Took me a while, but I asked my mom, "Mom, do you remember John Wyatt?" Oh, boy, did she go off. You stay away from that man. Don't you tell him anything about us or Stephanie. Yeah. They took care of it in house all right, didn't they? Now, my older sister, the one who had 8 children, there was a brother in the hall who had befriended my sister. Naturally, she was still married, so there was no hanky-panky going on. But he did this because, it is getting long, isn't it? He did this because he wanted to get close to her 12-year-old daughter. And he did. Again, I didn't find out about this until many, many years later, that he actually did molest her. She told me herself. She's disfellowshipped, by the way. He moved across the state again, got another 12-year-old girl. This time he kidnapped her, took her across state lines. So federal government got involved, and boom, he spent 10 years in prison. But the damage he did to that little girl, it could have been prevented. The damage he did to my niece, that could have been prevented. He's out now, by the way, living down there in Florida somewhere, last I heard. One of her other daughters was beat and raped by her husband regularly, and she went to the brothers for help. You do not deny your husband. That is why you are married, so that you can join together and forsake all others. But if you deny your husband, then he's just going to go out and find somebody else to give him what he needs. She was disfellowshipped. So the past 2 weeks I've been spending a lot of time writing about everything that has occurred that I have watched happen. I've been on the outside looking in all these years, looking at all the pain and turmoil that they have created, the havoc in our family, the division. There was no love at all. So, one day, my family committed the final hurt to me. And it wasn't even to me. It wasn't even me that they were hurting. It was my mother. You know, when my mother comes out and she comes to me crying because they did this to her, I wanted to hug her. I tried to hug her. She just stood there like this. And she started saying, "Please let me go. Please just let me go." Because she did not want me to hug her and comfort her. So I did the only thing I knew to do. I told her, "Don't worry, Mom. Jehovah knows your needs. He'll provide you with them." And then she calmed down, and she was okay. I think that was the last conversation I had with my mother. It was a couple years ago, other than when she calls on the phone and I accidentally answer instead of the person that she's trying to reach. I went out and I Googled ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, right? And I come across this site, ex-Jehovah's Witnesses for Jehovah. And I'm like, oh, okay, there we go. So I clicked on that, and that took me to the ex-Jehovah W meetup site. And I became a member of them and started sharing a lot about my past experiences. And I met Julie McCallan. Oh, what a wonderful person she is. I know there's plenty of people here who know her. But when I first got here, I have to tell you this. I saw those 3 crosses on the front of this building, all lit up. I almost turned around and drove 1,000 miles all the way back home. Just the sight of those crosses terrified me, filled me with terror. I've gotten past that, by the way, in the past year. But my daughter, I went to a church function with a friend of mine a few weeks ago, and I said, you know, she invited you too, but I know you're not really ready to do anything like that. And she says, yeah, Mom, it's the cross. She's like, the cross scares me. Because my mother demonized the cross. She demonized everything. Everything was demonized. My sister, mentally ill, she was demonized. That's what my mother said. They disfellowshipped my sister for that, by the way, for being mentally ill. They said, you're not mentally ill. You're just a liar. So they disfellowshipped her. She's back in the truth again. Oh, I'm sorry. Old habits die hard. Finally, I came here. I heard about the convention here last year, and I decided I was going to come and meet some of these ex-Jehovah's Witnesses because finally I had found people that understood me without me having to explain myself. They understood my language. They understood my terms. You know, we all come from the same place here, and that's what was so important to me. I wasn't alone anymore. That's what I just kept saying. I'm not alone anymore. So I heard the talk on the cross. I think Gus gave it. I don't see him here this morning, but I sat right here in this auditorium and cried through that whole sermon. I didn't know Jesus went through any of that. I didn't know he was beaten. I didn't know any of that. Jesus is a footnote as far as Jehovah's Witnesses are concerned. So, here at the convention, that Saturday morning, we walked down to the pond. Eric baptized me. That was you, right? And I'm telling you what, I was so scared. Julie, she just came and she's just like praying and praying and praying. What are you scared of? What are you scared of? What are you scared of? I didn't know. I was just scared. I was scared. I was determined I was going to do this, just like I was determined to come into this building, even through those crosses. But I was terrified of being baptized. But when I packed to go, I packed up a swimsuit. And I started to put it back, because I'm in Florida. We wear swimsuits for clothes down there. And, you know, I'm like, you're not going to be going swimming. It's the end of September in Pennsylvania, for God's sake. Well, the little voice in my head said, yeah, but what if they baptize people there? You want to get baptized. They'd never done baptisms here before. But that day, a young couple approached Eric and told him that they wanted to be baptized together. And so Eric said, anyone else who wants to be baptized, come on down to the pond. So here I come. I go back. I put on my swimsuit. I go down to the pond, and I get baptized. It was awesome. The rest of the weekend was just awesome. That was just the beginning for me. I armed myself for warfare. I was going back to my family, and I was going to show them the error of their ways. Well, several people advised me to just let my actions do the saving. Just let my actions. Okay. Little did I know that everything was going to change. I've got to skip a whole bunch of stuff, but it's okay. I'm going to get to the end. I've always had a lot of faith because I had nothing else. I had no family that I could depend on. I had nothing. I only had God. Even though I was not a witness, I knew I was always had God. He was always with me. Because he chose me when I was 5. And it didn't matter how many sins I committed, how many husbands I had, how many wrongs I've done to people, and how many hurts. It matters not at this point. It didn't matter then. He had forgiven me those sins before I ever committed them. He forgot about them before I even thought about committing them. Sometimes I still remember those sins, and I'm washed with shame. And directly after that, I am washed with Jesus' love, reminding me that that is forgotten. I have forgotten it. It's time you do too. That's what he tells me. I was going to end my talk. Oh, hi, Gus. There you are. I was going to end my talk on 1 Corinthians. The other brother did, but I'm going to share it too. I just want to read it to you. It's 1 Corinthians verses 1 through 8. If I speak in tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I have become a sounding gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I should have prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I should have all faith so as to remove mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. And if I may give away all my possessions, and I may deliver up my body that I may boast, but have not love, I am profited nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not envious. It is not boastful. It is not puffed up. It does not act unbecomingly. It does not seek the things of its own. It is not easily provoked. It keeps no account of wrongs. It does not delight in unrighteousness, but rejoices with the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never fails. Love is what Jesus Christ is, and that is what being a Christian is all about. And I had no love once I was being brought up as a Jehovah's Witness. There was no love. There was only judgment and condemnation. I started searching for love in all the wrong places. Searching for love in all the wrong places. You know. 35 years it took me to find love, and I found love. And I found God. My daughter, same conversation with the crosses, just real quick. I said, yes, once I started doing this, I found, and she said to me, you found God. And I said, you're right, I did. And you're going to find him too now, because I'm not going to give up till you do. That pretty much covers it for me. I know everybody's hungry. I have lots of other stuff that I could have talked about, but of course, you know, time. Boy, he was right. Someone told me that time just flies by. He was right. But thank you very much for your attention, and have a wonderful day. Let's eat. Thank you.